So I'm finally getting down to the point where I'm gonna strip down this junkyard motor and send it off to the machine shop to have the block double checked and have it decked and honed and whatever else comes up that needs to happen. So this is 100% complete 4.7 motor out of a 2002 Dodge Durango, 16 tooth tone ring. I think I ran a Carfax on the VIN number before I pulled this out of the motor, or before I pulled this out of the Durango, and I believe it had 160,000 miles on it. Well, my Dakota has 152,000 on it right now. So very similar mileage, but I'm going to completely rebuild this from the ground up. I'm going to put hyper-eutectic pistons in it. I'm probably going to put ARP head studs in it. And that's probably all the beefing up I'm going to do. But I'm going to rebuild everything from scratch. And I'm going to bolt the supercharger out of the Dakota onto this before I put it back in there. So as this motor sits right now with coils, injectors, intake, throttle body, water pump, I mean, as it sits right here, it cost me $130. I had to pull it out of the junkyard myself, which took me a whole Saturday afternoon. But this is my plan so that I can keep my Dakota and keep it in good running order. That's really the only thing it needs. The motor still works. It's been working for almost 2 years now. January will be 2 years. It's November right now. So it's been running fine. I've towed tractors with it. I've towed cars with it. I've helped people move. I hauled a 2,000-pound pallet of sod from the sod yard to my house. I mean, it's been a really solid truck so far. It just smokes like a freight train and burns oil. It burns about a quart of oil every 400 miles. So I definitely want to rebuild the motor, but I can't have my truck down for however long it's going to take me to rebuild the motor, which is why I bought this thing, so I can rebuild this and then just swap it into the Dakota over the weekend. So here we go. The video that I'm doing right now is mainly for documentation purposes so that I don't forget how things go back together, because it's going to be weeks before I get to put this back together. I've got to take it to the machine shop, which will take a couple of weeks. Got to order the parts after I find the numbers from the machine shop, which will take a couple of weeks. So I'm going to start tearing it down. One of the things I did do is the lunch meat that we buy from the grocery store comes in these little plastic containers. So over the past year and a half or so, I've been saving those. So as I buy lunch meat and eat a sandwich, I save those so that I have something to put nuts, bolts, pins, wires, whatever I need to. And write on there where they came from, what order they came, and all that kind of stuff. So get started tearing it down. Here we go. Position sensor. Crankshaft position sensor. Injector wires. Oil pressure sensor. I left a few of these. Fuel injector wires. brake booster hose. It goes to a plug right here. This is the PCV valve. It goes from up here to a port back here on the back of the intake. That doesn't exist on my truck right now because of the supercharger. I got one more sensor here. I guess it's intake air tank. Maybe a map sensor, I don't know. Go ahead and get all these injectors off. It had a braided fuel line in the junkyard, but I couldn't get it out of the fuel tank, so I just went ahead and cut it. But I did keep the 90, so. One ground cable right here bolted above this freeze plug in the head. Another really long ground cable that was bolted, I believe it was down to the transmission, but it's also bolted to this top bolt here on the head. Go ahead and remove the grounds. So these ground bolts hold nothing in place. They're just little tiny short 13mm bolts. Yeah, 2 identical bolts. I'm going to save this ground strap in case the one in my truck is toast. There is a ground bolt over here, right behind the thermostat housing. Fairly substantial 15mm bolt. It was just a bare bolt. I had to take the ground off and leave it in the junkyard. All right, now we're going to do the the coils. Saving all of the coils. Lost a few of these nuts that hold the coils down in the junkyard. Was holding some kind of intake bracket or something, I can't remember. But it has to be removed with these 2 bolts to get this one coil off. I don't know if these coils are good or not, but I know I have at least 1 coil on my truck that's melted. And then I have another one that has a broken tab on it. So I'll test these, see if I can find a coil that I can replace those 2 on my truck with. So out of 16 coils, I should be able to find 8 that are good enough to use. Little clips just come off with a screwdriver. That's what they look like. Just slide on in place. A few 8mm bolts that hold the fuel rail down. I'll keep the 8mm bolts with the clips. So it'd be really nice to have my gun. Tiny little bit of fuel left. One injector's been stubborn. all the fuel rail, all the clips, all the injectors, all the O-rings, one box. I'm gonna pop the dipstick out first. Go ahead and get it out of the way. 10 millimeter nut on the top of the dipstick. 10 millimeter bolt goes into the block on the back. Fairly decent sized bolt. So, dipstick, there's no oil in it whenever I found it in the junkyard. O-ring still attached. Bolts. Nope, 10 millimeter bolts. I'm gonna have to pull off the injector nuts. Or, I'm sorry, coil nuts, so that I can get to the intake manifold bolts. A lot of people said that you had to take the intake manifold off of the 4.7 motor so that you could get the motor, get to the rear 2 bell housing bolt. I didn't find it difficult at all. Maybe it's because I've been a mechanic for a while and I've done this kind of stuff a lot, or what. But I was able to get back there with a wrench, break them loose, and just work it off with my hand. We'll see how well it goes on my Dakota. Probably took it off. Similar, this bolt is going on the front passenger side. Let's see if this will come loose. Yep. So that's all that holds the intake on there. Intake is now removed. I'm gonna go ahead and seal that off. So we have in here coil retainer nuts, intake manifold bolts, short and long. Yep, pulley puller. It's a press fit. Yep. Yep, it's a press fit. Looks like we're going to AutoZone to rent a tool. So I got the crankshaft off. Definitely took a crankshaft puller, 3-jaw crankshaft puller, or pulley puller. I'm sure it still has oil and coolant left in there. Put that on there. Start taking bolts out. I'm sure they're all different lengths. Deep barrel 17 millimeter. So some of the bolts for the water pump go all the way through the water pump into the block to hold the front case on. Some of them don't. So this one right here between these two goes all the way through the case cover to the block. This one dead center on the top goes all the way through the crankcase cover to the block. These two go to the block. This one right here behind the pulley assembly goes to the block. Yeah, and most of these bolts are 16 millimeter, with the exception of a big long one at the top and the pulley assembly. Oh, really really short one down at the bottom underneath the crank. Now there's the case cover. Yeah, it's loose. It's already starting to ooze a little bit. So this guy goes right there. Sorry, I forgot to tell you. This funky looking bolt goes past the one with the spacer directly next to the water pump. So now that I've got that cataloged, I'm just going to strip out all these bolts, put them in a container. Ooh, we got one more. This one looks like it goes to the block. I guess we'll find out here in a second. Yep, looks like it goes to the block. There's no way that goes to the block. That's way too short. Yeah, that one's just a water pump bolt. Alright, let's see. Don't see any other bolts. Looks like we just gotta persuade it to come loose. Yep. I knew that was going to happen. Alright, so there we go, crankcase cover. Put this off to the side. No foreign debris in the oil pan. A little bit of dirt from me pulling the timing cover off. Tensioners look like they're in good shape. No debris inside the coolant passages. This motor looks like it was healthy whenever the car was wrecked. The car, the Durango that I pulled it out of had been T-boned on the passenger side. And it had only been in the junkyard for about a week before I got to the junkyard and pulled the motor out. So I got to it just as soon as I humanly could. So